Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
Coming up today on The Story.
I just can't remember my pre-conversion life. All I can remember is my life after 6 as a child. And so I started to question whether I was actually saved or just naturally a good person. And I actually had a crisis of faith. I started to doubt whether I was saved, and I started to think maybe I'm just a good person. And it was really getting to me. It was really bothering me.
The Story.
G'day, I'm Jimmy Colfax. Welcome to The Story. Our guest today is Ben Evans. He's the CEO of Feed the Hungry, and he's going to share his story with us. He comes from a family that has travelled around a lot and has quite a spiritual heritage. He'll share with us the events that have shaped his life and led him to become involved in feeding the hungry in various parts of the world. Ben is chatting with Eric Scatterbo.
Ben Evans, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to the chat.
Glad to have you with us, and we're going to find out all the things that led up to you being the CEO. Now, you're in Sydney right now, is that right?
That's right. Born and bred in Sydney a while ago, but
okay.
I've been all around Australia, but we always came back to Sydney.
Okay, and Feed the Hungry is not just in Australia, is that right?
That's right. So we have an office. I look after Australia, New Zealand, and I guess really Asia Pacific, but we're also part of an international or global group. So we have offices around the world and feeding hungry children around the world.
Okay, well, we're going to find out about all that and how you're involved with that. But first, let's go back to your childhood in Sydney. What was it like? What are your general impressions?
So it's funny. We did travel a lot, as I alluded to. My father actually was a volunteer in the Vietnam War, and was actually injured during one of those incidents.
So he was a volunteer. So then he wasn't a soldier.
Oh, sorry. He was a volunteer. There was a draft in Australia, so people were drafted into the army, but he actually volunteered to serve. And there's this idea that if you volunteered, then no one else in your family would be eligible for the draft. So by him volunteering, it meant that his brothers didn't have to. He wasn't the oldest, but certainly his outlook was very mature. He was injured. He unfortunately lost his best friend during the war, and he certainly came back a little quieter. He wasn't a great talker about his experiences.
Do you think maybe that was post-traumatic stress disorder?
I think so. I mean, he received a grenade shrapnel to the head in his injury. His best friend was injured. And I was going to say, watching Apocalypse Now with Charlie Sheen and Marlon Brando, he says, that's more real than I care to admit. That's about his only comment on the war. But when I was growing up, there was a kind of restlessness in him. And so we kind of traveled. I think the nice way to say it is he was a pioneer. So he liked to start new works, but once it was running, he was looking for the next challenge. So we've traveled everywhere. I've lived in Melbourne and Adelaide as a young baby. Don't have any memories. Lived in Perth for a few years. Then we moved up to Darwin and a little island called Elcho Island, Galawinku, which is part of the Wessel Islands. Lived on a small island with about 2,000 Aboriginals, where my father started a management training course. So that was an exciting life, living on a small island.
Yeah.
This is back in the days when there was only one television station, so we only had access to the ABC, and that wasn't 24 hours. So at some point it turned off. But running around barefoot in the bush, strangely enough, having a pet kangaroo.
Oh, really?
Just a wildlife, a bit like Tom Sawyer. Those kind of adventures, but it just seemed normal.
And how old were you at that point?
I would have been 8, 9, 10 years. So we were there for about 4 years on the island. And,
now, were the people on the island poor or average income?
I guess from my little perspective, we didn't really think about that. There was maybe 20, 30 white people on the island, and the rest were Aboriginals, and we had different roles. So the Missionary Aviation Fellowship, MAF, flew into the island, so we would regularly catch a flight from Darwin to our island that way. I just have good memories. It was just an adventure for me as a young child. the beach is across the road, 5 gigantic mango trees in my backyard,
Oh, wow.
pawpaw trees,
And the kangaroo.
and a kangaroo. So, just fun memories.
Yeah.
From there, we moved back to Darwin, back to Sydney. Then we lived in Alice Springs for a year. That's a town that has one traffic light. So that was very exciting time. We were there for about a year, and then I came back to Sydney, and I've been here ever since. So
Wow, you really have moved around.
yeah, we joke my father was going to move to Vanuatu to take a job, but they ended up not doing the job and building an airport instead, or a new runway. So when you're trying to estimate what your father is worth, for me, my father was worth a runway in Vanuatu. So that's how important my father was.
Okay, so what was the impact on you, all this traveling around?
Well, it's kind of made me an introvert. So
Is that right?
I don't like traveling. I'm quite happy to stay home. I'm a bit of a sook when I travel. I just, as soon as I arrive, I'm counting down the days till I can get home to my family. So that
Now, of course, as the CEO of an organization that's international, that's
It
all part
presents
of
some
the
challenges.
Yeah. I was thinking that. Yeah.
But I mean, of course, it's the smiling faces at the other end of the trip.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
when you're seeing the work, so you push through.
Yeah.
Just recently, I flew from Melbourne to Newcastle to Brisbane to Perth all in one day.
In one day?
In one day. So
Oh my goodness.
I don't recommend it.
Okay, now getting back to your childhood, was there any spiritual influence in your life?
Yeah, my mother's side, very spiritual. Actually, my grandfather, William Britzer, he came to the Lord and felt called to the mission field. And so he knocked on this is back in Perth, he knocked on the door of the Bible college and said, "Let me in." And they said no, but he persisted until they let him in. Some things don't come easy, but you have to be persistent. And eventually he went to an African country of Malawi, where he served for 20 years as a Baptist missionary.
Oh, okay.
Had a dramatic impact on the country.
How so? What kind of impact?
There's something about the bad part of missionary colonialism is trying to bring our culture on other cultures and enforcing our views on other countries, which are well-meaning but can have negative impacts. Whereas my grandfather really came with the idea that we are all equal under God and saw them as equals and treated them in that way. So he quickly gained respect. And when he would travel to the different villages, actually an uncle wrote a biography about his memories of the story. So
what's the name of the book?
The Boy from Brunswick.
Oh, okay.
Available at some good bookstores.
Somewhere.
I have a copy of it. So, but he would just travel, and as he's traveling around in his constituency, if I can say it that way, he just loved people, treated them with respect, and through that, the gospel in deed and in actions, was able to build connections and make an impact for the Lord. He had, I think, when his 5th or 6th child was, his wife was pregnant, they decided they needed to move back to Australia to raise the children with a proper education. But it was a very tearful farewell. And then he became a Baptist pastor in WA, and then came over to Sydney. And that's where my mother met my father.
Okay.
And they caught each other's eyes. Apparently, my dad was the hot guy. I'd like to say I'm following on that story, that legacy, but maybe that's not quite so true. But she caught my father's eye, and they got married. And I think I was about 2 when my grandfather died. I'm the firstborn.
I was going to ask if he had any impact on your life.
He was a well-loved pastor. I think in the 70s they had a youth group at the Baptist Church of about 170 people, I think. So there was something dynamic about my grandfather that people really responded to. And so I feel some of that has come on in my life as well.
Yeah, let's find out about your own spiritual journey.
So, as my dad was traveling different places, we found ourselves in Perth at York. I'm trying to get the right thing, Yokine. So we were actually living in a a secondary Baptist manse. My mother was the children's church Sunday school teacher for the church, and my father was a youth group leader. So we had a little converted garage at the back, and he would run youth group. And my mother would read a Bible story to us every night. And so I've got a copy of the Good News for Modern Men, New Testament, very large print, even from across the country. You can probably read this print. But at the first page is an inscription from my mother that says, Ben gave his life to Jesus on January the 8th, 1980, 6 years old. Praise the Lord. So apparently, as we were reading the stories, I said, I want to accept Jesus into my heart as a little 6-year-old. And of course, my mother prayed with me. And this is the time when you're still sharing a room with your siblings. So my little sister was with me, 2 years younger than me. And together, we both asked Jesus into our heart as little children, and a testimony to my mother's faithfulness and just the simplicity of her faith.
Now, I'm looking at you via Zoom, and you're holding the actual Bible. Is that right?
Yes, I still have the Bible with that inscription. So I do have a shelf full of Bibles, but this is a...
Yeah, but that's kind of neat to have the very one that your mother read to you when you became a Christian.
Yeah, it's an important memory.
You're listening to The Story. Today, Eric Scatterbo is chatting with Ben Evans, who's the CEO of Feed the Hungry. Ben's sharing his life journey with us and the events that have shaped him into who he is today. We'll hear more of Ben's story when we return.
The Story. If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Colfax and this is The Story. Our guest today is Ben Evans, who's the CEO of Feed the Hungry. Before the break, we heard a bit about his background and about his family's rich spiritual heritage. Now we'll hear more of his story as he continues his chat with Eric Scatterbo.
My wife is Chinese Cantonese. She was born overseas and came out as a...
Wait, we got to find out how you guys met.
High school sweethearts
Okay.
is the answer. So from about year 10, we were sitting in commerce and I didn't realize it, but we started flirting with each other. And
you didn't realize it. Typical guy.
Typical guy. I'm just a friendly guy, you know.
Oh, yeah, okay.
At youth group, I'm friends with everybody, so I'm very comfortable. I was always comfortable with with talking with girls, so I'm just making conversation, having fun. But her friend next to her liked my best friend who was sitting next to me, so they wanted to swap so that we would give attention to her. And you know, as young children do, it's all very complicated, very convoluted. Then it's like, I didn't realize I was giving her attention. Like it was like, and so I'd say shortly, but probably 6 months, we started dating, and we've been married since 95.
Oh, okay.
So honestly,
and she's a Christian as well.
She is now. She wasn't at the time. It's that classic example, I think, of a Christian and a non-Christian dating, and how you're passionate about your faith, but you don't want to lose your girlfriend. You don't want to lose your boyfriend. If you share the gospel, maybe she'll reject you, and because she rejects your faith. So that was always an issue for me. Very good Christian boy, of course, very honoring of parents and, attending church, all those sort of things. But we broke up, got back together, broke up several times because, we're kids.
Yeah.
And then one time it was the breakup to end all breakups. It was towards the end of year 11, start of year 12. And she's saying, I need to concentrate on HSC, my final year of high school. So
I got
you're
no time
distracting
for you.
me. Yeah. And there was something serious about the decision. And I knew that it was final, not like all the other breakups, if that made sense. So accepted it. And I really don't know what prompted me. But I remember one night having a phone call. We had a cordless phone, so not a mobile phone, but a cordless phone from landlines. And I'm outside on our property, and I'm giving her the hard word, so to speak, and I'm saying, "You're going to hell." And it was this realization that I've already lost my girlfriend. So my insecurity about sharing the gospel with my girlfriend, who may leave me because of my faith, had gone. I'd already lost her, so I had nothing left to lose. And so there was this a confidence in me, to say it that way, just to have a calm conversation. And we agreed to disagree on the point. She was telling me, I'm a good person, I'm going to go to heaven. And I'm saying that's just not how it works. Being a good person, you have to accept Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior. That's the important thing. He is the way, he is the truth. He is the only way to heaven. So we agreed to disagree and left it. I still felt calm about it. It's a strange experience. But maybe a few months later, I had this strange prompting again to call her up and ask her to come to our church anniversary concert. It was like the 6th year or 7th year of our local church.
So you were still friendly?
Still friendly, yeah. But we probably didn't talk a whole lot at school, but I called her up and I was completely surprised because she said, yes, all right, I'll come. She came. The short version is she came. There was an altar call and she responded to the altar call, and she was in tears and she said, "You were right." And it's probably the only time my wife has said that to me. So I cherish that memory.
Maybe have a little statue to memorialize that special experience.
Don't take those things for granted. Just got to harp on that for a while.
That's right. Oh,
and,
that's great.
So this is year 12. And I think I'm trying to get my ages right. I think I was 21, just after 21 when we got married.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, we come back to, because I gave my heart to the Lord as a young child, I grew up as a teenager really in a good home. And I would say as a good person, I didn't really have to struggle with sin in that classic sense or temptations.
Really? Are you human?
Yeah. That was my concern, because we would have testimony nights or outreaches and people would come up and they would share their testimony and how that they were drug dealers, they were murderers and, all those sort of things.
The dramatic conversion.
The very dramatic conversion. And I'm going, I think there's something really powerful about the gospel in that one of its attributes is that it's transformative, and that when you encounter Jesus, he changes you. And I love that idea that the disciples, their names changed as an example of that change. We have a change in our hearts now. That's how we look at it. And I just can't remember my pre-conversion life. All I can remember is my life after 6 as a child. And so I started to question whether I was actually saved or just naturally a good person. And the more testimonies that I started to hear, I actually had a crisis of faith. I started to doubt whether I was saved. And I started to think, maybe I'm just a good person. And it was really getting to me. It was really bothering me. And so it just dawned on me, and I said, there's no rule, there's no reason, there's no thing preventing me saying the sinner's prayer again. And so one night in my bed, I said, Lord, forgive me. And I just went through the sinner's prayer, and I said, I make you Lord of my life. I confess my sin to you, and I ask you to cleanse me, make me righteous, and give me a new heart. And I have told this part of my story before, so I take a lot of glee in saying, you know what I felt afterwards? I felt absolutely the same. No feeling of any difference. No warm feeling
or anything?
No angel singing in 3-part harmony, nothing. I felt exactly the same from when I said it before, but the difference for me is I've never doubted from that day. It was a real moment. So a rededication, I think we're familiar with that language.
Yeah. Well, but I think, some people, I've heard this before, they were maybe raised in a Christian family and question their salvation like you did, But I think what you did was the logical thing to do. Well, if you're in doubt, make sure there is no doubt. Accept Jesus as your Savior, pray the sinner's prayer, and move on.
I've in my church life, I've met many people who kind of have that doubt and keep coming back up for prayer and having had that experience and know it's okay. It's not a reflection that they're not saved. It's just they're working through it, and just relax. Yeah. And I encourage you, if you have doubts, just return back to the source and just keep going. There's a quiet assurance now. I think that's the end of this story, right? I was young. I was good. I rededicated my life, and that's the end of the story. But there is a little bit more to the story, which I don't want to mention, but I think I owe it to tell the rest of the story because...
Okay. You have me curious now.
It'll be right after this break. Stay tuned. The nature of my mother in our church is she would pay $1 to get a copy of the sermon on a cassette and bring it home so you could listen to it again.
Back in the days of cassettes.
Yep. And so we used to do that. We would attend church twice on Sunday, so we'd soon collect a lot of tapes. And I think at some point, my mother said, I've got too many. We had a tea chest full of tapes at one point, 100, 200, 300 cassettes in this box. And my mother said, we need to make room for more tapes, no doubt. So she asked me to go through them. So I'm looking at the tapes, and sometimes it would have a label that makes sense, and other times it was just simply the date. So, okay, Sunday the 3rd, all right, I'm just going to throw that one. Sunday the 10th, I'm going to throw that one. And then there would be a speaker's name. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll put that in that pile. And so I'm going through, just picking them out. And there was one tape that I don't think had a title, but it was from a speaker called Ivan. And that sounds like a Russian name, of course. So I put that in the pile. And I don't know how long I went through. There's probably a few tapes that I collected, but I grabbed that cassette and put it in a tape player, and I'm just playing it while I'm in the background. But somehow during his sermon, I had a vision. And I actually had a vision of me standing in front of the cross and seeing Jesus on the cross. And I'm looking at Jesus, and he never said anything. It's just me looking at Jesus. And I'm just looking at his eyes, and I just knew that Jesus died for me. We say that often, that if I was the only one, Jesus would die for me, that I am precious to him. And that became a very real experience for me. And so I don't know if the tape finished, and this is why I say it was an experience. So I haven't gone back to the tape because I don't, it's connected to an experience that I don't want to muddle. But I just sat there weeping. And my girlfriend, I've only had one girlfriend. My girlfriend became my wife, so I'm very grateful for that experience. But my girlfriend came over to me. This is before we broke up. And I'm just weeping. And she's going, what's going on? And I couldn't talk. I was just weeping. It was an experience that was hard to put in words. And I'm just sitting there weeping. And eventually she's trying to work out why I'm crying. And of course, all children, we're teenagers, but we're children. She's being self-interested, and she's thinking, are you trying to tell me that you're gay? and is that why you're crying? And is this a way that we're going to break up? That was her response. And I, like you, it made me laugh.
Yeah, she didn't know what was going on inside of you. Yeah.
And that kind of broke that moment for me, and I was able to do it. And so I know that those two, me rededicating my life and this supernatural experience, are connected. But for me, I think when I rededicated my life, that's the end of the story for me, because I doubted, and I've stopped doubting, and I'm confident in my thing. This experience is bonus. You know, it's separate. It's not what I was asking for, but I feel like I have that experience there.
So you have that confidence now.
Yeah, I have. Well, I had resolved the issue when I rededicated it, and then this other experience is on top of that.
Okay, that was part one of Eric Scatterbo's chat with Ben Evans, the CEO of Feed the Hungry, who's been sharing his life journey with us. We invite you to join us again next time to hear more of his story and how the Lord leads him to be involved in feeding the hungry in various parts of the world. That's all coming up next time. To learn more about Feed the Hungry, you can go to their website. It's feedthehungry.org.au. Also, to learn more about their yearly Takeaway Hunger Day and how you can be involved, you can find that information at their website also. Once again, it's feedthehungry.org.au. Finally, before we end today, we'll leave you with a Bible verse that has been very impactful in Ben's life. It's from John chapter 10, verse 10, where Jesus says, "The thief, or in other words, the devil, comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But I have come that they may have life and have it more abundantly." And when you have an abundant life, you can't help but want to share it with others so they can be fulfilled as well. Once again, we invite you to join us again next time to hear more of Ben's story and how Feed the Hungry is being a blessing to many. Until then, I'm Jimmy Colfax, encouraging you to share your story with someone today.
Next time on The Story.
2 weeks before my 21st birthday, my father died in a car accident, which was a terrible moment, not only because it was just before my 21st birthday and it's all about me, but my mother was actually 8 months pregnant with our 6th brother.
Once again, Ben Evans from Feed the Hungry joins us to share more of the events that have shaped his life and how the Lord led him to become involved in feeding the hungry in various parts of the world. That's Ben Evans, the CEO of Feed the Hungry, sharing more of his story next time.
The Story. Just another way Vision is helping you look to God daily.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.